Hello, I am at work. I have a short break right now, so I was, of course, thinking about bold action. And this is a follow-up video, or it's a rookie tutorial. It's a tutorial for beginning players who are maybe beginning out as competitive players who want to go into that scene. Competitiveness is what I talk about. If you want to go and watch thematic stuff, go and watch another channel. I talk about competitive bold action, and this one is a rookie tutorial for how to start competitive British in bold action. And it sort of builds upon the video that I made where I was trying to build a common vocabulary about army builds. So if you haven't watched that one, go and watch that video. It is good. It's quite long, and it talks about a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about in this video. This one is not going to be quite as long as the army build video because it's only about one nation, the British. So let's go and share my screen here. And I'm going to stop because I, of course, did a PowerPoint. Right. So I'm going to talk about competitive British. And my disclaimers for this is that I, of course, do talk about competitiveness. So I'm talking about this from a perspective of analyzing the game as a game, not as something where I'm creating history or being thematic in any sort of the way. I am not a rivet counter about this, although I do teach history. I am a professional historian. That is not why I'm attracted to this game at all. I am here for the game itself. For the game itself, that is what I do. That is competitiveness, right? My expertise with the British is, I think, quite good. Um, I so far I have brought the British to the WTC twice. Um, the first time I did that, I was number 5 in the world. The second time, I also think I ended up number 4 or 5 at the latest WTC. And both of those times I brought my British, and I also won the Danish nationals using my British. I've won quite a few tournaments using British. So I know the British Army, I know it quite well. I know what it can do and what it can't. The competitive advantages for the British lie, for me, mostly in their customizable national special rules. The British can choose their own national special rules, which makes them which does so that with every army build you have, you can choose the national special rule that mostly benefits that special army build, which is very, very strong. I wish the Germans had something like it. That would make them way stronger. But for Brits, this is one of the main things that really stands out. They also have quite a good spread of regular and especially veteran infantry choices. Quite strong with especially their special rules for those as well. Not so much the equipment. The equipment for the British is so-so, but the special rules are second to none. Their armored car choices is the best of the game. They are spoiled for choice. They have so many good choices in the armored car slots. As is their tank choices. They also have a lot of different tank choices. Although some of them, again, do stand out. And finally, their transport choices are also really, really strong. So those are the competitive advantages. They do have something that where some sort of places where they sort of crap out, where they have disadvantages compared to other armies. Compared to other armies who were in the early war, they lack cavalry. And this is a complaint I have because the British actually did use cavalry in the Middle East and in Africa, but Warlord Games have yet to let them have cavalry in generic reinforced platoons, for instance. So unless your tournament allows specifically cavalry, they're not there. And the British do have some very nice cavalry. They have camel cavalry, but can't use it. They also lack cheap infantry choices that many of the other armies have. This is, of course, to form them into something that is approaching the historical advantage of the British Army, which was a very professional army. And they didn't have throwaway units like many of the other armies did. But that means in the game that they sort of lack cheap infantry choices. If you can get access to it, there's the what are they called? The Home Guard or something, sort of a militia type unit that was supposed to defend Britain if in case the British Isles were ever invaded from Germany. That never happened, but they're not allowed in every format, and they also lack AT power, which is quite a big lack for many British lists. They don't have access to Panzerfaust, and the Piat is, quite frankly, crap. So AT is not a thing that they have. Now, what army lists can you build with this? For me, there are 6 different army lists that you can comfortably build with the British. The mixed bag is always there. It's always readily available, and because the British have so many good competitive choices, the mixed bag units of British lists are quite often quite good. Especially maybe the 25-pounder howitzers are a good choice, and you can mix that in with some good infantry and maybe a good tank. You have a good all-round list because your choices are that much more competitive in those sectors. You can even build 2 tank lists, taking one of the armored car choices that some of them are tanks, and combine it with another tank. So you can build pseudo tank lists quite easily, especially maybe because in the transport section of the British list, you have the universal carriers, which are 7+ and can be armed with twin LMGs. So you can split fire at 2 different targets. You can even equip them with an anti-tank rifle. So they have anti-tank capability. They become a miniature tank. They are very, very good, those universal carriers, and you can make army list builds that are very strong using those. You can also, of course, run a Death Star type of unit or army list. And there are some very expensive tank builds that you can get in for the British Army, but the most infamous one is, of course, the Mercus, the Para Mercus especially. This is one of those that will break the internet, and I highly recommend that you never ever take this. The concept is that you mix the New Zealand special rules, where you can get Maori special rules for your infantry, and you give that to Paragurkhas. That will mean that you have Paragurkhas that have the Gurkha special rule. They have stubborn as well, because they're Paras, and then they have all the benefits from the Maori special rules, which means that you can't get shot at when you charge. You have extra dice in the assault. They are completely overpowered, and they break the game, because the Gurkhas are, of course, a specific national group from Nepal, whereas the Maoris are a specific national group from New Zealand. So how can they be Maori Gurkhas? They can't. But in the rules of the game, you can build this. I don't think you ever, ever, ever should. Then you have the motorized infantry. Motorized infantry lists are quite easy to make. We already talked about the universal carriers that make this list possible, and especially maybe with the access to commandos and paras in the British list, which are both really good units that have a lot of SMGs. One thing that is lacking here is an easy access to flamethrowers, although you can get flamethrowers for the British Army, and you can get them regular. Many of the units that have those are limited to 1 per army build. So, and then you have the possibility of building true recce armies. The Long Range Desert Group is a really good theater selector. If your event allows theater selectors, you can build a really good recce list where everything has recce and is motorized. And of course, you can build assault-heavy lists using the Maoris or the Gurkhas. Really good choices there. The standout units of the British roster are, for me, the M3 Stuart with sponsored LMGs, what I call the darker Stuart, really strong choice, and one of the most competitive units of the game because it's so good for the points value. Unfortunately, you can't get Recce with the British version of this, but since you can combine it with a lot of other good choices, it won't often happen that you regret buying a Stuart. Also, I already talked about how the armored carts selection is really good for the British, and if you go look at the Jeeps, the LRDG Jeep, the Long Range Desert Group Jeep, and the Airborne Recce Jeep, both of them really good choices for me, especially the Airborne Recce Jeep, because you could get double MMG on it, so 10 shots forward facing for 45 points, I think it is. Really cheap. And it has Recce. It's really a cheap, very competitive choice. Also, in the armored car selection slot, you get the Stackhound, which is hands down the best armored car of the game, especially so because it's a tank. It has 8+ and it's close top, so it counts as a tank. You can do tank assaults with it. And it also has a hull-mounted machine gun with the coaxial machine gun. You can even put a pindle-mounted machine gun on it. And you can upgrade it to have instead of a light AT gun, it can have a medium AT gun. This is a beast of a tank. And it is what makes it possible for you to have 2 tanks in a single platoon of British. Really good choice. Then you of course have the infantry choices. For me, especially the Gurkhas and the Chindits stand out. You could also mention the SAS, the Special Air Service. Really good choices here. The Chindits are maybe one of the best choices of the game for skirmish infantry outside of the Finnish army list. They are veterans. They have the move and fire special rules of the Americans. So really good choice. And the Gurkhas, of course, the best close combat unit of the game. Maybe excepting the Polish Lancers. Then, of course, we have the free forward artillery observer. I would never buy him for 100 points, but getting him for free, it's worth every single point you're not paying. That free unit is key in many situations. It will mean that the enemy gets pinned out at critical times. Lovely. And then finally, the light howitzer with the 25-pounder shell. Really good choice, fairly cheap, can do a lot of damage. Really good choice. So that was my primer for how to start out playing competitive British, what you should look for, and the build that you should try and go for. If you're in doubt about the builds that I talked about, go and watch my build, the Army List build tutorial. And that was it. All you rookies playing British, welcome to it. I love it myself. It is a great army to play competitively. One of the top 3 armies of bold action competitively, at least. So, welcome to that. And that was the tutorial for the British. Cheers.